In this demonstration, we're going to take a look at Windows Update settings. So here I've signed into my Windows server, and if it detects that there are updates that should be applied, then we'll get the message as shown here in the bottom right. That's the default behavior of the OS. It says updates are available, and I have the option to click the View Updates button. That'll take me into the Windows Update portion here in my Windows settings, where each of the updates is shown listed. Now, currently the status for these is showing as pending install. So once we're ready to install, we can just click the Install Now button. Now, of course, this can be configured in a different way. We have a message at the top in red that says some settings are managed by your organization, and you can click View Configured Update Policies. And then down under Policy Set on your device, we'll have any settings that might have been configured, for example, through Group Policy. Now, Group Policy really consists of thousands of Windows settings that can be deployed to some or all computers in the Active Directory domain. So we are at a domain controller here, so let's close out of this, and let's just go ahead and open up the Start menu. First of all, if we just want to search for the word update, we can get back to our Windows Update settings once again in that way. However, I'm going to close that out and go back into the Windows Start menu, and under Windows Administrative Tools in the G's, I'm going to go into Group Policy. Now, the Group Policy Management tool is where we can work with GPOs, Group Policy Objects. There is a default GPO that's tied or linked to the Active Directory domain, and the GPO is called Default Domain Policy. Of course, under different organizational units, I have one here called HQ, we can then have specific GPOs linked only to the computers and users within that OU. So here I've got one called HQ Security Settings. The point is that if you're going to configure Windows Update settings, think of the scope of the machines in the Active Directory domain that you want to get those settings. So if I only want computers under the HQ OU to get the settings, I could go and open up that HQ Security Settings GPO. So I'm going to right click on it and choose Edit. And that opens up a new screen. From here, if I were to go down under Computer Configuration and expand Policies, if I were to select Administrative Templates and then right-click on it, I could go to Filter Options, and let's say I just search for the word Update, and click OK, and I'll drill down under there and click All Settings, and now we have all of the items that are related to the word Update shown here. So as we go further down through the list, we've got a number of options related to working with things like Windows Update, such as whether or not to include drivers when Windows updates are applied on the machine. Further down, I've got an option called Turn On Software Notifications, which we can configure to control whether people get the messages that Windows updates are available. And if I close out of that, any computers in or under the HQ organizational unit would get those specific Windows Update settings. It might take a little time, even perhaps up to a few hours, depending on your network topology. Another option to think about on the Windows side when it comes to Windows updates is setting up a Windows Server Update Services host, or a WSUS host. Here on my Windows Server, if I go into the Start menu, one way I could install WSUS is to go through Server Manager. The other ways include going to the command line and issuing the appropriate commands to install that component. So here I'm going to click Add Roles and Features. I'll just continue on through the wizard until I get to the Select Server Roles screen. So some server roles are already installed. You'll have a check mark for those. If it's kind of a black square in the white square, it means some of the components are installed. And if I go all the way down to the bottom, Windows Server Update Services, it says 2 out of 3 possible services are installed for that. And I can expand that to see which ones. So WSUS is already installed. Now you would install this because you want to control an update server that distributes updates to internal client devices. So once it's installed, you can just go to your Tools menu and you'll have the option of working with Windows Server Update Services. You could also launch that GUI tool also from the Start menu. So if I go to Options on the left, here's where I can specify all the details, such as the products and classifications for the updates I'm interested in. There's no point in getting all the updates from the internet and bringing them down to this server for Windows 11, for example, if we're not using Windows 11. So we can specify the products and the classifications of those products, such as critical updates, security updates, service packs, and so on, that we want included. You can also specify how often you want to synchronize this server with Windows Update Online. And if you go to the Synchronizations menu, you'll see any synchronizations that might have occurred between this server and Windows Update Online. And then you can go to any of these update categories like all updates and control the filters to control what shows up down below. And you can select one or more updates. You can choose to approve them, and you can determine which computers you are approving these for so they can be delivered to those computers. So a WSUS host then is really just an internal Windows Update server that can pull updates from Microsoft Updates Online. You can also actually pull it from another upstream WSUS server, such as one that might exist at a headquarters branch location. So there are many options then to control Windows updates on Windows operating systems, especially at the server level. Now here in Windows 10, it's pretty much the same type of options other than configuring group policy. I mean, you could have the group policy tool installed on Windows 10 to reach out to a domain controller, but let's just take a look at the local Windows Update settings here on a Windows 10 client. So from the Start menu, just going to search for the word Update. So first of all, check for updates. If that's not been configured to be automatic, then we can go in here and invoke it at any point in time. I can click Check for Updates. While that's happening, we also have a number of options such as changing the active hours, even viewing update history, which updates have been applied to this machine already. In some cases, when you're troubleshooting, it could be the result of having applied a recent update that has broken something. It's rare, but it does happen from time to time, so knowing about this is important. Now, under Update History, we've got a couple of categories: quality updates, driver updates, definition updates for Windows Defender antivirus, and then other updates. So make sure you take a look at the appropriate category if you want to get a running list of what's been applied to this machine in terms of Windows updates. So if we've got updates that are required to be installed, then they will be installed. We could also go to advanced options, such as, do we want to receive updates for additional apps beyond just the OS or beyond just Microsoft products when we update Windows? Do we want to restart a device immediately after applying an update that requires a restart? Should we show a notification when our machine needs to be restarted to finish updating? So all of these options can be configured on an individual Windows station. But of course, if you have a number of machines joined to an Active Directory domain and they have the same config needs, you could do all of this centrally once in group policy.